The Silent Guardians. The crystalline spires of the Verdant Collective's Central Command pierced the violet skies of Meridian Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Inside the highest tower, First Speaker Lyra Voss stood before the Emergency Council, her luminescent scales dulled with exhaustion. The holoprojector before her displayed the devastating truth that none of the assembled representatives wanted to face. Horizon Colony has fallen, she announced, her voice carrying the weight of 8 billion lost lives. The Void Swarm consumed the entire system in less than 30 standard cycles. The council chamber erupted in distressed whispers. Representative Zen 2, his cybernetic sensors whirring anxiously, leaned forward. Impossible. Horizon Colony had our latest defensive grid. 3 battle fleets. Quantum shielding. All gone, Lyra responded, manipulating the hologram to show the aftermath. Where a thriving civilization had once existed, only empty space remained. Not even debris marked the colony's passing. The swarm's adaptation rate has increased exponentially. Our weapons are becoming useless faster than we can develop them. The truth of her words hung heavy in the chamber. The Verdant Collective, an alliance of 17 spacefaring species, had built their civilization on principles of peaceful cooperation and technological advancement. For 10,000 years, they had explored the stars, sharing knowledge and resources. Their biggest challenges had been diplomatic disputes and trade negotiations. Then the Void Swarm appeared. The first signs came from the outer territories. Strange energy readings, lost communication with frontier outposts. The collective had dismissed these as normal space phenomena. By the time they recognized the threat, 3 systems had already gone dark. The Void Swarm operated with a singular purpose: consumption, not just of matter and energy, but of information itself. Each world it devoured made it stronger, smarter, more adaptable. The collective's advanced technology, once their pride, had become their weakness. The swarm learned from every weapon used against it. Show them the projection, Sub-Commander Trell requested, his metallic exoskeleton clicking as he moved beside Lyra. The hologram shifted, displaying a map of collective space. Red markers indicated fallen systems, while blue showed those still under their control. A spreading wave of corruption pulsed across the display. At current rates, Trell continued, we have 8 months before our core worlds fall. The swarm's computational capabilities now exceed our most advanced AIs. Our strongest weapons are being neutralized within minutes of deployment. Silence fell over the chamber. These were beings who had mastered faster-than-light travel, who had built artificial worlds, who had cured death itself for their citizens. Yet before the Void Swarm, all their achievements meant nothing. There might be one option. The words came from Archive Keeper Senna, an ancient being who had served the collective for over 3 centuries. All eyes turned to her corner of the chamber, where her holographic form flickered with nervous energy. Speak, Archive Keeper, Lyra commanded. In the restricted archives, there are records of a species we quarantined 400 years ago. A species whose development was deemed too dangerous to allow into the galactic community. Recognition dawned in Lyra's eyes. The humans. Senna nodded, projecting new images into the center of the chamber. A blue-green world, the 3rd planet of an unremarkable yellow star. When we first discovered them, they were barely achieving spaceflight. But what made them unique, what made them dangerous, was their approach to technology and warfare. The images change, showing historical records. Cities rising from atomic fire, weapons that could split atoms, vehicles that could break atmospheric bounds despite their primitive technology. While other species developed technology gradually, building upon each discovery systematically, humans made explosive leaps. Their greatest advancements came not from peaceful research, but from conflict. They would achieve in decades what took other species centuries, often driven by the need to overcome existential threats. That's precisely why we quarantined them, Zen 2 interrupted. Their aggressive development posed too great a risk to galactic stability. Yes, Senna agreed. But now we face a threat that our stable, predictable development cannot overcome. Perhaps we need a species that evolved facing extinction. A species that turns desperation into innovation. Lyra studied the images of Earth. The quarantine had been implemented with sophisticated technology, gravity lenses to hide nearby stars, automated systems to redirect potential alien visitors, energy fields to dampen certain forms of space observation. For 4 centuries, they had congratulated themselves on containing this potentially dangerous species. "Do we have any recent observations?" she asked. Senna hesitated. The quarantine was designed to work both ways. We cannot penetrate their system with our standard scanning technology. Our last clear images are from 50 years ago, showing significant industrial development on their moon and 4th planet. So we be reaching out blindly to a potentially hostile species that's had 400 years to advance without oversight. Trell's voice carried both fear and wonder. They could be more advanced than us now. They could destroy us themselves. Or they could be our only hope, Lyra countered. She turned to face the full council. We are facing extinction. The void swarm cannot be reasoned with, cannot be appeased, cannot be outlasted. If humans are even half as innovative as our ancient records suggest, they might see solutions we cannot. One by one, the council members began to nod. What choice did they have? Their civilization was facing its end. The same desperate innovation that had made humanity dangerous might now be their salvation. Prepare a first contact team, Lyra ordered. We're breaking the quarantine. As the council chamber emptied, she remained, staring at the image of Earth. In their arrogance, they had tried to cage a species they feared might one day threaten them. Now, they would have to hope that humanity's response to being freed would not be vengeance, but salvation. Little did they know, deep beneath the surface of Mars, in bunkers stretching for hundreds of kilometers, humanity had been preparing for this moment for centuries. They had never been truly quarantined, and they had not been idle. Breaking the chains, the contact fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its 12 ships representing the finest technology the Verdant Collective could muster. First Speaker Lyra stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dawn, watching as ancient quarantine satellites detected their presence and began powering down, their final act of service after 4 centuries. No response to our broadcasts, Communications Officer Wren reported, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with anxiety. The human communication channels we monitored centuries ago are silent. Lyra was about to respond when the ship's sensors erupted in alarm. Spatial distortions appeared around them, dozens, then hundreds of them. The tactical display struggled to make sense of what it was seeing. By the ancient stars, Trell whispered. Ships emerged from the distortions, human vessels, but nothing like the primitive rockets they'd observed centuries ago. These ships were massive angular constructs of dark metal and pulsing energy fields. Each one dwarfed the Eternal Dawn, their designs completely alien to collective aesthetics. We're being hailed, Wren announced, his voice shaking. It's, in our language, Perfect High Collective. A hologram materialized in the center of the bridge. The human figure wore a dark uniform with silver and gold insignias that the collective's databases couldn't identify. Her posture was relaxed, almost casual, but her eyes held the weight of command. First Speaker Lyra Voss, the human said, her pronunciation flawless. I'm Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Welcome to Sol Space. We've been expecting you. Lyra fought to maintain her diplomatic composure. You know who I am. Chen smiled. We know everything about the collective. Your quarantine was impressive, but it failed 30 years after implementation. We chose to let you believe it worked. The implications hit Lyra like a physical blow. For centuries, they had thought themselves the Watchers, the guardians keeping a dangerous species contained. All along, they had been the ones being watched. Those spatial distortions, Trell interjected, his tactical mind racing. That's not hyperdrive technology. Phase shifting, Chen confirmed. We developed it 60 years ago. Far more efficient than conventional FTL. But that's not why you're here, is it? Tell me about the Void Swarm. Lyra exchanged glances with her crew. They had prepared speeches, diplomatic overtures, careful explanations. All useless now. Follow us, Chen continued, not waiting for a response. There's something you need to see. The human fleet escorted them deeper into the system. As they passed Mars, Lyra's crew gasped. The red planet was transformed, its surface covered in massive industrial complexes and defense installations. Orbital rings circled it, serving as construction yards for vessels that made their escort ships look small in comparison. But it was what lay beyond Mars that truly shocked them. The Jupiter defense sphere, Chen explained as they approached the massive structure, 1,000 kilometers in diameter. It's where we develop and test our more interesting weapons. The sphere was a marvel of engineering, a perfect shell of dark metal surrounding a miniature sun. Energy readings from it exceeded anything in collective records. This is impossible, Trell muttered, checking and rechecking his instruments. The power requirements alone. 0-point energy extraction, Chen said casually, coupled with quantum vacuum manipulation. But let's discuss more pressing matters. The human fleet guided them to a docking station. Inside, Lyra and her senior staff found themselves in a vast command center. Holographic displays showed real-time data from across the galaxy, including deep within collective space. We've been tracking the swarm since it first appeared, Chen explained, bringing up detailed tactical analyses. Its consciousness is impressive, but predictable. It evolves along optimization curves we mapped out years ago. You knew it was coming, Lyra asked, her voice sharp with sudden anger. Why didn't you warn us? Chen's expression softened slightly. Would you have believed us? More importantly, would you have accepted our help before facing extinction? Your civilization quarantined us because you feared our potential for violence. You needed to understand why that violence evolved. She gestured, and new images appeared. Human history, but not the sanitized version in collective archives. Wars, yes, but also the innovations they sparked. Medical breakthroughs born from battlefield necessity. Space technology accelerated by military competition. AI systems developed to counter existential threats. Humanity didn't become strong despite conflict, Chen said. We became strong because of it. Every threat we faced forced us to innovate, to exceed our limitations. The Void Swarm is just another threat to overcome. A new hologram appeared, a weapon unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. This is the Thanatos Protocol, Chen explained, a comprehensive defense system designed specifically to counter von. Deploy the phase disruptors, Chen commanded. From the Nemesis and its support fleet, thousands of small devices emerged. To the collective observers on the bridge, they looked almost primitive, simple spheres of dull metal. What are those supposed to? Trell began, but his words died as the devices activated. Space itself seemed to shudder. The phase disruptors didn't target the swarm directly. Instead, they altered the fundamental properties of spacetime in their vicinity. The leading edge of the swarm fleet suddenly found itself operating under different physical laws, their carefully evolved adaptations becoming useless. Neural strike force, you have your window, Chen announced calmly. The fighter squadrons moved in, their ships dancing through space in impossible patterns. Each pilot's neural implants connected them not just to their squadron, but to the quantum battlefield itself. They didn't need to predict where the swarm would be. They could sense all possible positions simultaneously and strike at the most vulnerable. Remarkable, Lyra whispered, watching as the seemingly invincible swarm began to fall apart under the coordinated assault. But surely they'll adapt. They can't, Commander Jackson explained, her cybernetic eye glowing with satisfaction. The phase disruptors randomly alter physical constants within their range. Even we don't know exactly how space will behave moment to moment. You can't adapt to pure chaos. The battle unfolded like a deadly dance. Whenever the swarm began to show signs of adaptation, the phase disruptors would shift their effects, changing the rules again. The neural strike force moved through the chaos like they were born to it, their quantum-linked fighters striking with perfect precision. But Chen knew this was just the opening move. "Deploy the entropy cascades," she ordered. New weapons platforms emerged from the human fleet. These were products of the Jupiter defense sphere, devices that should have been impossible according to conventional physics. They didn't fire beams or projectiles. Instead, they accelerated entropy in targeted areas. Portions of the swarm simply aged, their complex structures breaking down into basic particles over seconds instead of eons. By the ancient stars, Trell breathed, his tactical displays struggling to make sense of what they were seeing. "You're not just fighting them. You're changing the fundamental nature of space itself." "Conventional weapons were never going to be enough," Chen replied, her eyes fixed on the battle. "The swarm adapts to simple force, so we learn to change the battlefield itself, to fight on levels they can't reach." The collective observers watched in awe as humanity's arsenal continued to deploy. Quantum-entangled warheads that existed in multiple states simultaneously, impossible to intercept. Time dilation fields that trapped swarm elements in moments of stretched time, allowing the neural strike force to pick them apart at leisure. But it was the next weapon that truly demonstrated humanity's advancement. "Initiating consciousness disruption," Jackson announced. From the Nemesis bow, a wave of invisible energy pulsed outward. It wasn't targeted at the swarm's physical forms, but at the hive mind itself. The weapon was the product of centuries of research into consciousness, quantum mechanics, and the nature of intelligence. The effect was immediate. The swarm's coordinated movements began to fragment. Individual drones lost connection with the greater consciousness, their actions becoming erratic. "How is this possible?" Lyra asked, her scales shimmering with excitement and fear. "We've had 400 years to think about how to fight threats like this," Chen explained. "While your civilization focused on stability and steady progress, we prepared for war. Not because we wanted it, but because we knew that somewhere out there, something like the swarm existed. The battle was over in hours. Where the collective had lost world after world, humanity's arsenal had shattered the swarm's advance in a single engagement." But Chen's expression remained serious. "This was a relatively small force," she cautioned. "The main swarm consciousness will learn from this defeat. It will try to adapt." "But you planned for that too, didn't you?" Trell asked, beginning to understand the depth of human preparation. Chen's smile was grim. "Everything we showed today. It's our first-line defense. The weapons we're willing to reveal." She turned to face the collective representatives. "The real arsenal is still waiting. Things we built but hoped never to use. Because sometimes survival requires walking right up to the edge of what's possible, and then taking one more step." Above them, the neural strike force began recovering its fighters, their pilots already analyzing the battle data, preparing for the next engagement. The phase disruptors powered down, space returning to its normal state. But nothing would ever be truly normal again. Humanity had revealed itself at last, and the galaxy was about to learn why isolation hadn't been a prison for them. It had been an opportunity. Turning the tide. In the 3 months since humanity's first engagement with the Void Swarm, the galaxy had transformed. Collective worlds once trembling in fear now bristled with human defense systems. The Jupiter defense sphere had spawned children, smaller but equally formidable installations appearing across strategic systems. But the swarm was learning. Admiral Chen stood in the strategic command chamber deep within Mars, studying the latest battle reports. The room's quantum displays showed conflicts unfolding across 17 sectors simultaneously. The swarm had split its forces, trying to overwhelm humanity's defensive network through sheer volume of attacks. "They're adapting faster than predicted," Dr. Yuki Tanaka announced, her hologram appearing beside Chen. As head of the Quantum Physics Division, she had helped develop many of their most effective weapons. The latest swarm variants show partial resistance to the phase disruptors. Then it's time for the next phase, Chen replied, sending out a priority alert to all human fleet commanders. Initiate Project Prometheus. Across human-controlled space, massive structures that had been under construction for weeks began to activate. They were technological marvels that made even the phase disruptors look primitive, devices capable of manipulating the quantum fabric of reality itself. First speaker Lyra. Chen addressed the collective leader, who had made the Mars Command Center her temporary headquarters. What I'm about to show you, it's beyond classified. This technology could reshape the galaxy itself. The human admiral gestured, and a new hologram appeared, a technical blueprint that made Lyra's scientific advisors gasp in disbelief. We call them reality anchors, Chen explained. They don't just change local physics like the phase disruptors. They can rewrite the fundamental constants of space-time within their range. Gravity, electromagnetic force, strong and weak nuclear forces all become tools in our arsenal. That's impossible, one of the collective scientists whispered. Impossible is what humanity does best, Dr. Tanaka replied with a slight smile. We developed the theory during our isolation. When conventional physics wouldn't give us the weapons we needed, we learned to change physics itself. The first reality anchor activated in the Orion sector, where a major swarm fleet was advancing on a cluster of collective worlds. The effect was immediate and devastating. Space itself seemed to crystallize around the swarm ships, fundamental forces shifting and realigning according to human commands. The neural strike force moved in, their quantum-linked fighters now equipped with weapons that took advantage of the altered physics. In normal space, their attacks would have been impossible. Within the reality anchor's influence, they broke the swarm apart with terrifying efficiency. But the true power of Project Prometheus wasn't in direct combat. The reality anchors serve another purpose, Chen continued, bringing up new tactical displays. They're creating a network, a web of altered space that the swarm cannot adapt to because the rules themselves are in constant flux. We're not just fighting them, we're changing the nature of the battlefield itself. Lyra watched in awe as the strategic situation began to shift. The swarm, for the first time, was being contained. Every attempt to advance was met with space itself turning against them. The reality anchors created corridors of altered physics, channeling the swarm into killing grounds where human weapons operated at peak efficiency. But victory came with a price. We're detecting quantum instabilities, Dr. Tanaka reported, her expression grave. The reality anchors are putting unprecedented strain on the fabric of space-time. We can't maintain this level of manipulation indefinitely. How long? Chen asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3, before we risk permanent damage to the affected regions of space. After that, she trailed off, the implications clear. Chen nodded, having expected this. Then we have 3 weeks to spring the trap. Deploy the consciousness inhibitors. New devices emerged from human fleet carriers, spherical constructs of dark matter and quantum circuitry. Unlike the brute force approach of earlier weapons, these were subtle, designed to infiltrate the swarm's hive mind through its own quantum communications network. This is the technology we developed after studying the Kuiper Belt incident, Shen explained to Lyra. We learned that consciousness itself has quantum properties. These devices don't just disrupt the swarm's communication, they introduce chaos into its very ability to think. The effect spread through the swarm like a virus, causing increasing confusion and disorder. Individual drones began to lose coordination. Larger constructs started exhibiting contradictory behaviors. The hive mind itself showed signs of fragmenting. But the swarm's core consciousness, hidden somewhere in the galaxy's outer rim, was fighting back. Reality itself groaned under the strain as two impossibly advanced technologies, human and swarm, battled for supremacy. "We're detecting a massive energy surge from the rim," Trell reported, his tactical displays lighting up with warnings. "The swarm, it's gathering its forces, all of them." Chen's expression hardened. This was what they had been waiting for, what all their preparations had led to. The swarm was being forced to commit its full strength, to gather its consciousness in one place. "Send the signal," she ordered. "All fleets prepare for Operation Endgame." As the orders went out, she turned to Lyra and the other collective leaders. "What you're about to see is our final weapon, the one we built but hoped never to use. Because sometimes, to save existence itself, you have to be willing to break it first." Above Mars, the massive human fleet began to move. The reality anchors pulsed with new energy. And in secret facilities across human space, devices of unimaginable power began to wake. Weapons built by a species that had spent 4 centuries preparing for this exact moment. The final battle was about to begin. A new dawn. The outer rim of the galaxy blazed with impossible light as humanity's final gambit unfolded. The Void Swarm had gathered its full might. Trillions of drones surrounding a massive central consciousness that pulsed with dark energy. Against this force stood the combined fleets of Earth, backed by technology that defied the laws of physics themselves. "All reality anchors at full power," Dr. Tanaka reported, her hologram flickering as quantum interference saturated the command center. "Space-time stability at 18% and falling. We have less than an hour before total collapse of the affected sectors." Admiral Chen nodded, her cybernetic interfaces showing her the full scope of the battle to come. The neural strike force had taken position, 10,000 linked minds ready to coordinate the most ambitious military operation in human history. Behind them, the massive form of the Terminus Array waited, humanity's final answer to existential threats. "You never told us what the array does," Lyra said softly, watching as the enormous construct began to power up. "Because once we activate it, there's no going back," Chen replied. "The array doesn't just change the rules of physics, it rewrites them, permanently." The swarm made its move first, launching waves of adapted drones that could partially resist the reality anchor's effects. They had learned, evolved, become stronger, but humanity had counted on this. "Initiate the quantum lock," Chen commanded. The Terminus Array pulsed, sending out waves of energy that defied conventional detection. This wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was a key, unlocking aspects of reality that even humanity's most advanced theories had only hinted at. Space itself began to crystallize around the swarm forces, not just changing its properties but fundamentally altering its nature. The drones found themselves operating in a reality where their adaptive abilities worked against them, where each evolution made them more vulnerable rather than stronger. "Neural strike force, you have your window," Chen announced. "Execute Operation Sunforge." The quantum-linked fighters moved as one, their pilots combined consciousness directing attacks with impossible precision. But they weren't aiming at the swarm's physical forms. Instead, their weapons targeted the very fabric of this new crystallized space, creating cascading reactions that rippled through the altered reality. The swarm's central consciousness reacted, launching a desperate counterattack. Dark energy tendrils lashed out, trying to tear apart the human fleet. But the reality anchors held, their network straining but unbroken. Consciousness inhibitors detecting multiple fractures in the swarm's hive mind, Dr. Tanaka reported. "The quantum crystallization is disrupting their ability to maintain unified thought." "But," she hesitated, "we're seeing similar effects in our neural strike force. The human mind wasn't meant to operate in crystallized space." Chen's expression hardened. They had known this might happen, that their final weapon could be as dangerous to humanity as to the swarm. But they had prepared for it. "Neural strike force, initiate consciousness transfer," she ordered. "Fall back to baseline reality." The 10,000 pilots disconnected simultaneously, their fighters switching to autonomous control just as the Terminus Array entered its final phase. The crystallized space began to pulse with new energy, Not just changing reality, but creating something entirely new. What's happening? Lyra asked, her scales shifting colors in response to the unprecedented energy readings. We're not just changing space, Chen explained, watching as the operation reached its climax. We're creating a pocket universe, one with physical laws specifically designed to be lethal to the swarm's form of consciousness, and we're going to trap them in it. The swarm realized the danger too late. The crystallized space began to fold in on itself, creating a boundary between normal reality and the engineered universe humanity had created. The swarm's attempts to escape only accelerated the process, their own energy being used to complete the transformation. Terminus array at full power, Dr. Tanaka announced. Point of no return in 3, 2, 1. Reality itself seemed to shudder as the pocket universe sealed itself off, taking the swarm's consciousness with it. In normal space, the drone bodies simply fell dormant, their controlling intelligence trapped in a realm where its very nature worked against it. The battle was over. But the cost had been enormous. Multiple reality anchors reporting critical failures, Trull reported. The quantum stress has created permanent anomalies in 17 sectors. Those regions of space will never be quite the same. Chen nodded, having expected this. Sometimes survival requires sacrifice. The affected sectors can be contained, studied. We'll learn from this, grow stronger. As the fleets began recovery operations, Lyra approached the human admiral. 400 years ago, we thought we were protecting the galaxy by quarantining humanity. We were wrong. We should have been learning from you instead. Not wrong, Chen corrected, watching as the neural strike force pilots were evacuated, many showing signs of mental strain from their exposure to crystallized space, just too focused on stability over adaptation. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to face the impossible and find a way through. The quantum displays showed the aftermath of the battle. Dormant swarm drones being collected for study, reality anchors powering down for the last time, the terminus array slowly cooling as its monumental task completed. But among these images of victory were signs of change that could never be undone. We've changed the galaxy, Lyra observed. Yes, Chen agreed. But change brings opportunity. Humanity spent centuries preparing for threats like the swarm. Now we can focus on building something new, together. Above them, the stars shone on a galaxy forever altered. The quarantine was broken, the swarm was defeated, and humanity had finally taken its place among the stellar civilizations. But their greatest challenge lay ahead, not in fighting monsters, but in helping to build a future where such weapons would never be needed again. It was the dawn of a new age, bought with sacrifice and determination, born from humanity's unwavering will to survive. And this time, they would face it not in isolation, but as part of something greater than themselves. The universe would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.